The original script for Songs of War Seasons 2 and 3 has some very high highs and very low lows. Some of the most iconic parts of the show, in my opinion, were never officially animated. For a long time, they only ever existed in written form. There's also some stuff in the script that seemed totally out of place and in desperate need of a rewrite. A few characters who showed promise in Season 1 got massive downgrades, so I took action to fix some of these flaws. Songs of War is an animated series by Squared Media. Please check out the full movie if you haven't already. I cannot recommend it enough, and Squared Media is finally ready to start funding soon to hopefully finish the show. If you'd like more information, check out Squared Media's video about the future of Songs of War. Back to the original topic, Rhea was kind of a Mary Sue, Tigran got sidelined hard when Deathsinger showed up, and Sen is kind of a boring protagonist. Today we're going to do something a little different than usual. Instead of analyzing these characters, a small team and I rewrote them to improve their arcs in the script. And by a small team, I really mean mostly just 3 people, including myself. I needed people smarter than me to make this actually work, so I want to give a huge shout out to Yeezus Alex and Get Scribbled for helping out a ton, and especially Alex for expanding on a majority of these ideas and making Season 2 and 3 feel more complete and epic. A few others I'd like to shout out include Aaron Voltaris and Asher6971 on Discord, who sort of inspired a lot of our rewrites, and the thumbnail was made by Vexen, so thank you for that. Alright, this is your spoiler warning for Season 1 of Songs of War, and the original script for Seasons 2 and 3. Now, it's time to skip back to the finale of Season 1 and begin our rewrite where Squared Media left off. Six months after the Deathsinger returned is when Season 2 begins. The clanless Ardoni Sen is training with his mentor, Gallius, and his core motivation for training so hard is pure hatred of the Voltaris. Sen's home was destroyed by the Voltaris clan, and his mind begins to spiral. They took everything from Sen. They burned his village, killed Thalius Sindaris, and slaughtered his family, leaving Sen with nothing but grief that turned into anger. Sen has been idolizing Thalius ever since he watched the champion die. And during their training, Gallius sees Thalius' blind hatred in him. He fears Sen will go down the same path his brother did, and he sees a twisted reflection of Thalius in Sen. In the beginning of Season 2, Sen had been asking Gallius when he'd learn to use his songs, yet every time he diverted the topic. Sen grows tired of Gallius' avoidance and begins to act even more like Thalius. He reluctantly calls one of his previous students, Val, to teach Sen about songs. He eventually realizes that Gallius called Val to teach him about the dangers of songs instead of how to actually wield them. But Val teaches Sen to use his song anyway, against Gallius' will. Gallius saw Sen and Val on the shrine using songs from afar, and he just sighs in disappointment, not even attempting to stop them. Val also can tell Sen is a pure Voltaris hater and tries to calm down his anger in her own way. She makes things fun as they learn and lightens up the mood a little whenever they're with each other. Sen's Voltaris bloodlust subsides a little thanks to the peaceful nature of Ataraxia, Gallius' guidance, and his friendship with Val. When Sen overhears Gallius receive a report of a resistance group called the Knights of Ardonia, he remembers Hubris' offer and decides to finally join them. Sen tries to leave in the middle of the night so Gallius wouldn't know, but Gallius being Gallius, of course he knew. He's waiting for Sen in the main room and has a talk with him before he leaves. Gallius can't stop Sen from going and found out he was learning songs behind his back. He isn't mad, he's just disappointed. He's kinda like a tired parent, yet Gallius knows if he stops Sen, then his resentment would only grow. Instead of lecturing Sen, they have a meaningful conversation before he goes off to fight. Sen realizes the not-so-great way he'd been acting and apologizes to Gallius, yet he's still resolute to join the resistance. Sen departs from Gallius on better terms than earlier in Season 2. He just tells Sen to make wise choices and to make him proud. Sen leaves Ataraxia well-equipped with new knowledge, skills, and able to wield songs decently enough to join the fight. Instead of Sen and Rhea reuniting right before his first mission, we thought it made more sense for them to meet at the Knights of Ardonia's base, since there was no real reason for Rhea to attack the Voltaris by herself, besides unnecessary arrogance. Rhea's not the captain of the Knights of Ardonia in this version. Rather, she was one of 3 co-founders, the other 2 being Hubris and Grek. Sen and Rhea finally see each other again, but they look and act much different than before. Something to keep in mind for this rewrite are the major themes surrounding these characters. Sen is clanless. He's been an outcast his whole life, and the Voltaris destroyed the only place he could call home. He doesn't know who he is, but the little identity he had was stripped away from him. Both Sen and Rhea had everything stolen from them by the Voltaris, and their core motivations stem from the grief and loss they experienced in Season 1. Sen is driven by despair knowing there was nothing he could have done. Everyone was already dead when he and Thalius arrived. While Rhea was driven by regret because she was there when the attack happened. She feels like a failure for fleeing and doing nothing to save her family. Also, she wasn't skilled enough in songs to figure out how to use it on her own in this rewrite. Osivian sacrificed himself so she could run away, and she hid on the northern outskirts of the village, and that's how she survived, instead of committing a Mary Sue and learning how to use the song all by herself, with zero training whatsoever. We don't do that here. Rhea still has her own faults and issues, but she wants to protect other people from going through what she did. And Sen wants to eliminate the enemy responsible for their hardships in the first place. Sen and Rhea have similar reasoning behind their actions, but how they deal with it is completely different. Sen internalizes his grief and idolizes Thalius to use the idea of his power to stay strong, but Rhea was more outward with her grieving at first, and it caused her to build a wall around herself so nobody could see her weakness. Rhea treated the other knights more harshly at first to protect herself from how she'd be perceived if she showed weakness. Sen and Rhea don't seem to particularly acknowledge one another when they first meet back up. It's been months and they both thought the other was dead. They do get a moment to talk on the way to the vault, and it's in this conversation that Sen and Rhea realize just how far apart they've drifted and just how different their lives have become. Rhea was under a ton of self-inflicted pressure from the start, going on missions and hunting Voltaris, giving herself a reason to keep going despite all she had lost. Revenge was her one goal in life, only adding to her mental instability, whereas Sen had a much easier time in Ataraxia. Although he still held resentment, he learned not to take it out on others and focus on better things thanks to his much better circumstances. The Knights of Ardonia traveled to the vault to defend it from the Voltaris, who also found out a Prime Song was there. Ever since the Death Singer returned, he'd been uniting the Voltaris clan and attempting to hunt down the Prime Songs. Ingressus respected Tigran a great deal in the beginning since he killed Thalius Sindaris. Tigran Voltaris took command of the clan in the Death Singer's absence, and he was merciless. He slaughtered 4 villages, including Sen and Rhea's, and was incredibly loyal to the Death Singer at first. Tigran believed Ingressus would be the one to bring the Voltaris out of the shadows and get their revenge on the world. However, his high expectations of the Death Singer would be brought down at the very first encounter they had with the Resistance group. Tigran and Death Singer are walking on the bridge after stealing the Saporium Prime when they're confronted by Sen and Rhea. This being a rash decision made solely by Rhea, of course. Even though Hubris, Grek, and her had agreed not to confront the enemy alone, she disregarded them pretty quickly and went to fight on her own at the first chance she got. Sen decides to follow her since he recognized the Voltaris next to Death Singer as the one who killed Thalius. Tigran spits insults at them and goes to fight the 2 teenagers, easily defeating them both and nearly killing them. Despite all their hard work and months of training, there's still no match for Tigran or Ingressus. As Tigran is raising his diamond blade to strike them down, the Death Singer steps in front of him and stops him. Death Singer stares at Sen's markings and orders Tigran to stand down. Those few words set off something in Tigran's mind, and he is in disarray because the Death Singer, the mighty leader who murdered hundreds that stood in his way, is showing mercy? Sen and Rhea are both stunned as well, and Sen's worldview of the Voltaris being nothing but monsters was put into question by the Death Singer himself. The Death Singer is a mere moment away from saying something when the other knights swoop in. In the midst of everything, they manage to take back the Saporium Prime from Death Singer since he couldn't link himself to it yet. Sen and Rhea survive, but the Voltaris find an opening and escape. In the script, the vault fight never felt like it had much impact on the story. Sure, the Death Singer got the Prime Song, but nobody's characters change in a meaningful way. Through this rewrite, the vault fight is a catalyst for change, in both plot and the characters' psyches. Sen's Voltaris-hating worldview is shot to the ground, and Rhea's confidence in her abilities wavers. Tigran's vision of the Death Singer being their only hope is put into question, and the Knights of Ardonia got away with the Prime Song, pushing Death Singer into desperation to seek some allies. The Knights of Ardonia won the fight, but seeds of doubt start growing in the back of Rhea's mind about the Voltaris, and this makes her more aware of her own weaknesses. Being thrown down by Tigran made her feel humiliated and helpless, and she continues covering up her weakness by putting on a mask and acting tough and emotionless. The Knights may have won the fight, yet Rhea worries if she makes more dumb decisions, then eventually her mistakes will catch up to them and cost them greatly. She also noticed the Death Singer looking not at Sen's face when he ordered Tigran to stand down. Rather, he was paying attention to Sen's markings. Rhea develops a suspicion about why Sen is clanless in the first place, and she hopes she's wrong in believing he may be a Voltaris. Rhea tells no one about her new fear, wishing it to be nothing more than a coincidence. While the Knights are recovering, they're approached by another Ardoni who wants to help, Achillean Nestoris, the Tide Singer. We'll talk about Achillean more later because he deserves his own rewriting video. When the Tide Singer shows up, Rhea's little fumble causes her to feel unworthy, so she hands over leadership to Achillean, and the other 2 co-founders agree to let him take charge. Other than Rhea's downheartedness, things are looking good for the Knights of Ardonia now that they have the Tide Singer in command and protected a Prime Song from the Voltaris. Tigran, however, is not happy about any of this. But what bothers him most is the Death Singer's leadership. Tigran questions Ingressus' competence and willingness to do what it takes, and everything goes downhill from here. Tigran begins plotting against the Death Singer since he showed weakness at the vault, and sees Ingressus as softer than the legends portrayed him. Tigran knows he can never win in an actual fight with Ingressus, but he has more practical knowledge of the state of the Voltaris and modern times, since Deathsinger's basically a time traveler who skipped 154 years. His schemes begin shortly after the Vault fight, and Tigran's radical ideals would begin to cause a rift in the Voltaris clan. The Knights head straight for Crown Peak since Sen told them the Mobilium Prime was there, and Tigran starts forming a small faction of extremists who desire revenge, full of young, ambitious, and motivated Voltaris, Delthius included. These young fighters are just angry at the world, and want a better future while getting the vengeance they think they're entitled to. While Ingressus is busy allying with Pythus in the Nether, Tigran employs Lucidius as a double agent to get information from the Death Singer from eyes and ears that aren't his own, in order to discover Ingressus' weaknesses. Ingressus notices Tigran's sneaky, rebellious behavior and does not trust Tigran as much as he once did. Whenever Tigran and Death Singer meet face to face, Tigran still acts submissive and cowers before him out of fear, contradicting every other time he's on screen. He fears the Death Singer's power more than anything, yet he has zero respect for Ingressus himself after the Vault. The Knights of Ardonia take a pit stop and set up camp for the night. We still get a campfire scene of all the knights. However, this time, Tidesinger goes to talk with Rhea, and Sen stays with Grek. Grek and Sen have a talk in which Grek reveals that he and Rhea had trained with each other for the past few months, and Rhea poured her whole being into those sessions, frustrated at her own weakness. Thus, Sen would learn how the recent defeat might have devastated Rhea, and Grek states that he feels responsible for not being a better help for Rhea's mental health. This is also where Grek and Sen begin to form an older brother and younger brother kind of bond. Sen and Rhea aren't as close as they used to be, so Sen begins hanging out with Grek more and more, accidentally becoming close friends with him. Achillean sees an all too familiar look in Rhea's eyes and wants to help mentor her. Here's a nice little parallel. Gallius wanted to train Sen the right way because he sees Thalius in him, while Achillean trains Rhea the right way because he sees the Death Singer in her. Achillean personally trains Rhea in combat and leadership so she wouldn't fall to the dark like Ingressus had. Achillean knows what it's like to feel powerless and withdrawn, and he knows full well Rhea doesn't deserve to go through this alone. Another reason Achillean wanted to guide Rhea instead of Sen is because he recognized her markings as those of an old champion in the days before Thalius. He couldn't bear to tell her when she already had so much baggage, so Achillean settled with teaching her the truth of champions in general and the atrocities they committed, but refrained from telling her that she was descended from one of them. The Knights arrive in Crown Peak by midday, and the city is already in chaos. Ender dragons are flying around, the Nether has started to invade, and the Knights manage to sneak Sen and Tidesinger into the city to retrieve the Prime Song in the midst of it all. Deathsinger found the song first, and Sen is absolutely livid when he discovers Solomon willingly gave the song to Ingressus. Sen is furious that Solomon betrayed them just to save his own skin, and he nearly advances forward with intent to kill Solomon in his bloodlust to get justice for Thalius, his idol. Tidesinger stops him, knowing they'd gain nothing from this useless old man's death. The two singers have a quick fight in Solomon's house, and while the Death Singer ignores Sen for the most part, Sen is having none of it. He wants to be confrontational with the Death Singer and demand to know why he was spared at the vault, yet he still fears Ingressus, like any rational person would. When Achillean is knocked onto Solomon's balcony, Sen musters up his courage and lets out his frustration after losing everything because of the Death Singer, in the form of a few words that would cut deeper than he ever thought they would. Had Master Aegis known who you truly were, he would have never allowed you to boast Nestor's colors, Death Singer. He should have killed you the first chance he got. Little did Sen know he touched a sensitive topic for both of the singers, hurting Ingressus especially, yet they both managed to hide the twinge of heartache that struck them. Before the Death Singer can say anything in response, an Ender Dragon interrupts their confrontation and defends the Tidesinger and the clanless Ardoni. As this is happening, Rhea, Hubris, and the other knights are still evacuating the city, but Rhea wants to do more to help. In a panicked frenzy, she sees an Ender Dragon flying to where Sen headed and runs into the city, choosing her impulsive emotions over logical thinking. Rhea still has nostalgia for the old times, and doesn't want to see the kind kid Sen once was getting defeated and killed easily by a single Wither skeleton. Hubris tried to stop her, but he ended up chasing after her instead, now putting his life in greater danger too. After Hubris manages to calm Rhea down a little bit, they work together to try and kill some Wither skeletons and slow down the invasion. Would this whole thing be a stupid move on both of their parts? Yes, absolutely. Would it also be hilarious to watch two dumb teenagers running around aimlessly in Crown Peak with a bunch of enemy forces for a minute or two? Also yes, 100%. As the two of them run around Crown Peak killing some skeletons, they see a human father and his young daughter about to be crushed by a collapsing building near the edge of the city. Rhea quickly uses her Mobilium Song and gets them both out of harm's way, saving their lives. Rhea's confidence in herself goes up a little bit, and she's just glad the father and daughter are safe. Her heart is in the right place, but her self-confidence is very fleeting. Hubris and Rhea run into one Wither skeleton as they're trying to escape, and Rhea, in a moment of desperation and not thinking clearly, throws her spear to try to hit it, but she misses. Hubris has to distract the skeleton as she again uses her Mobilium Song to retrieve the spear. But now they're almost surrounded and barely escape the city because of her one tiny mistake. She missed a shot that should have been easy for her to make. Tigran easily chucked the spear at Thalius from 15 blocks away and killed him. But Rhea couldn't even hit a skeleton from a closer distance because she was scared and her hands were shaking. That little failure could have gotten both her and Hubris killed, and her own stupid errors weigh on her even more. Rhea thinks something is wrong with her when she keeps making the same dumb mistakes over and over again, first at the vault and now at Crown Peak. The Nether begins their invasion of Ardonia, and the Knights go into hiding. The Deathsinger makes arrangements with Pythus and spends a great deal of time in Crown Peak when the invasion begins. Tigran wastes no time while Deathsinger is busy and finalizes his plans. He intends on turning every Voltaris against Ingressus and convincing them that he should be the master. Tigran does not care about Voltar, nor does he care about the lives of any Voltaris who disagree with his perspective. Rather, he sees leadership of the clan and Voltar as a tool to exact revenge on the world. In order for his plans of revenge to work, he needs the Deathsinger gone and the authority that comes with holding Voltar. Ingressus knows Tigran is up to something, and every time they interact, the atmosphere is tense. Deathsinger vaguely knows what Tigran is doing, yet both of them are in a difficult position. Ingressus cannot kill a member of his own clan without it being against everything he stands for, and Tigran cannot kill the Voltaris Master without it being an act of treason. Ingressus refuses to destroy Tigran despite him being so obviously a threat because he didn't want the other Voltaris to see him as a monster. None of them know much about Ingressus, and he doesn't want them to be afraid of him. Eliminating Tigran would only make it seem like Ingressus is willing to kill any Voltaris who disagrees with him, making him no better than Tigran himself. Tigran is willing to betray and kill the Deathsinger, but Ingressus refuses because he wants the Voltaris to respect him, not to be terrified of him. While the Voltaris are relocating to the city of Hailstone, they start having this back-and-forth battle of wits for the allegiance of the Voltaris clan. The divide between the opposing Voltaris worldviews becomes so great that it devolves into a cold civil war between Tigran's extremists and the Deathsinger's loyalists. Meanwhile, the Knights of Ardonia would travel to Ataraxia to receive guidance from Gallius on what to do next. Rhea is now personally being trained by Achillean, and the two of them form a close-ish bond as he teaches Rhea to see past her shortcomings. Rhea thinks all the training she's done is pointless if she can't even keep herself level-headed in battle. Achillean helps her understand that even though she screwed up in Crown Peak, she also saved the lives of at least 2 innocent people. Had she not ran back into the city, that father and daughter would have died. Through the Tidesinger's mentorship, Rhea also feels a ton of grief for the way she's treated the other knights solely because of what she suffered. As the second season comes to a close, Rhea makes an effort to change her attitude towards the others and apologizes to Greg specifically after all he's done to help her, and how little she'd done to return the favor. Rhea becomes more honest and open with everyone so they can properly work together as a team and not suffer because of miscommunication or dishonesty. Rhea starts out self-assured and emotionally far removed when Season 2 begins, and now because of the good people surrounding her, she's able to start working past her issues and take the first steps towards learning from and eventually becoming a good leader. Sen still feels isolated from Rhea, but his friendship with Greg and Val is getting stronger by the day. Despite Rhea being mentored by the Tidesinger, Sen is still the only one who sees Achillean as more than just this legend. He calls Achillean by name rather than everyone else who still calls him by his alias, the Tidesinger. Sen is also dealing with some inner demons after his second interaction with the Deathsinger, and living through it. As much as he wants to hate Ingressus with every fiber of his being, something just isn't adding up in his head, and it unnerves him to his core. As Sen's mental warfare grows more complicated by the day, the resistance grows in strength to strike back. The season ends with the Knights of Ardonia preparing to free the world from the Nether's grasp, while Tigran gains more and more confidence in his conspirators and his plot to overthrow the Deathsinger when he least expects it. Season 3 begins about 2 years after the Nether initially invaded Ardonia. The Knights have been gathering forces around the world to fight back, including many Ardoni thanks to the Tidesinger. Sen and Rhea have trained rigorously during the time skip and are stronger than before. Sen is more conflicted about the Voltaris, though he'll still do what it takes to eliminate any threat to Ardonia, including them. Though Rhea tried not to show it to Achillean, she craved some revenge after all Tigran and the others did to her. Unlike Sen's Voltaris bloodlust from Season 2, Rhea knows there are more important things than vengeance, and the Tidesinger helped her and Sen see that more clearly. The Knights prepare to strike at Meridian, and things aren't looking too great for the Voltaris clan. The Voltaris Cold War is keeping the clan divided and weak, and Tigran and the Deathsinger are constantly at odds with one another. Ingressus still has around 2/3 of the Voltaris on his side, but Tigran's extremists are the vocal minority, and are typically more capable of fighting. The Voltaris conflict is like a game of chess, but Ingressus only knows half the rules. Ingressus has spent a majority of his time tracking the final 2 Prime songs, while Tigran continues scheming to find the perfect time to kill the Deathsinger. Ingressus has Voltar and uses it to command obedience when he's present, the staff being the only thing that keeps the clan from falling into 2 distinct factions. Tigran has sowed a seed of doubt in many of the Voltaris' minds about the legitimacy of the staff. Voltar shows who currently is the leader, but not who objectively should be. Tigran has made a lot of the clan question whether the Deathsinger deserves Voltar, even if they still followed Ingressus after all the deceit. This has been happening between Seasons 2 and 3, and the tensions between the Voltaris grow even more when the Knights of Ardonia strike Meridian to free the city. Tigran goes to battle the Knights without asking for permission from Ingressus first, and many of his extremists follow him. During the struggle, the Knights make their way towards the city center, and Sen and Rhea are far more competent fighters now. They're pushing their way through the city on the front lines until they happen to come across none other than Tigran. He recognizes them both and laughs sadistically, mocking them as per usual. They are much more evenly matched now, but Tigran's brute strength still overwhelms Sen and Rhea in the end. Tigran injured them both pretty badly, rendering them unable to fight, and broke their spirits for the 2nd time. Luckily, some other notable resistance members come in at the last second, forcing Tigran to retreat. Tigran took a devastating loss by retreating from a battle for the first time in his whole life. The Knights of Ardonia reclaimed Meridian from the Nether, and all of the other Voltaris who followed Tigran to the city were slaughtered. The only survivor was Tigran himself, and this alone caused his plans to almost immediately fall apart. Without a great majority of his supporters, Tigran lost momentum, and Ingressus was able to unite the clan for the time being, using Tigran's reckless actions as an example of what happens when a clan is not unified. Now listen, Tigran is a terrible battle commander. He sacrifices so many Voltaris in the name of revenge and is the exact opposite of Ingressus, who would rather fight alone than let his clanmates be meaninglessly slaughtered. Tigran never cared about the others, and his lack of good leadership has made a heavy impact on his extremist cause throughout the whole show, but his disregard for the lives of his followers ended up being a costly mistake this time. Ingressus hated that some Voltaris had to die to restore a semblance of unity to the clan, and Tigran's fury only increased. He has no choice but to submit to the Deathsinger now, but his loathing of everything Ingressus does and everything he stands for does not cease. Tigran is even more motivated to personally destroy the Deathsinger, and he decides to do the very same thing a desperate Ingressus once did. Ally with the Nether King for a cause that would wreck Ardonia even more. Only this time, nobody knew about the lone Voltaris betraying the world. They would know when the time was right. After their success at Meridian, the Knights sent some of their wounded soldiers back to Ataraxia to recover, including Sen and Rhea. Greg would also accompany them, not necessarily because he's injured, but because he wants to look out for his little bro. As he's recovering, Sen spends some time in reflection, reminiscing about his training with Gallius and has a calm talk with him and Val for the first time in a while. Rhea tries to help aid and comfort the other soldiers who were wounded far more severely than she was, and it's clear how much of a better person she is now compared to the angsty teenage attitude she had in Season 2. Rhea treats them kindly and embraces her softer side while still retaining the strength of a soldier when she needs to. A day or two later, Sen, Rhea, Gallius, and Greg are in the workshop when they hear panicked screams outside as Nardoni urges them to take the Seporium Prime song and run. The Tidesinger refused to wield the Prime in battle, so Gallius kept it in his workshop for safekeeping. But of course, the Voltaris came after it. The Deathsinger finally decided enough was enough, and he tracked down Ataraxia to take back his song and gain another advantage over Tigran. Greg is about to run outside to slow the Voltaris, and he looks back at Sen one last time and tells him to be safe. Val is already outside fighting, so Gallius had no choice but to give the song to Sen and Rhea, telling them they had to go now or else the Deathsinger would kill all 3 of them. Gallius knows he's too slow and couldn't outrun the Voltaris, so he quickly hands the song to Sen and Rhea, pleading them to go. Sen nods, and he and Rhea start to run off into the battle, trying to escape with the Prime song knowing that Gallius would probably be killed. Sen and Rhea aren't fully recovered from their injuries yet and stumble around in the burning city, the beauty of Ataraxia being completely destroyed as the Deathsinger slaughters anyone who stands in his way. A Voltaris whose markings are hidden behind the ash and smoke uses an Aggressium song to collapse the bridge Sen and Rhea were on, separating them. Sen finds himself alone on the other side, surrounded by rubble, clutching the Prime Song as he tries to find a way out. The Voltaris who collapsed the bridge approaches Sen in the smoke, and Sen has no choice but to defend himself. The Voltaris fights Sen and knocks him down to the ground, still holding onto the Seporium Prime with all of his might. Sen takes a closer look at the Voltaris, and they both have a weird moment of realization. They shared the same markings, and the Voltaris lowered his sword and only muttered a few words. "Could that be you? Brother?" My voice acting sucks. But their quick second of neutrality didn't last long. The Deathsinger flies towards them with the Mobilium Prime and glances at both of the Ardoni, at first sharing their look of confusion, but after seeing both of their markings, he had all the confirmation he needed. Ingressus whacks Sen unconscious, regains the Seporium Prime Song, and decides to take Sen with them to Hailstone. Delphius doesn't know what to think about the whole ordeal, but all the Voltaris leave Ataraxia once the Deathsinger got what he wanted. From another floating island, Rhea saw a little bit of this interaction. She was weakened and distracted, only able to get in a few glimpses of Sen and the other Voltaris. But Rhea did see the Deathsinger taking the Prime Song and Sen's brother recognizing him. Rhea was about to leap into action and jump to protect Sen, but she froze in fear instead. Her mind was thrown into disorder watching Sen seemingly surrender to the Voltaris. When the Deathsinger appeared, Rhea got flashbacks of the vault and a little wave of PTSD surged over her. Rhea hid herself from the Deathsinger and her breathing became panicked and shallow, the sounds of the battle reverberating in her head, and she was hyperventilating, trying to compose herself, but she couldn't stop. After a few minutes, Rhea managed to calm herself down. But by the time Rhea looked back where Sen was, they were all gone. Sen, the Deathsinger, and the Prime Song were nowhere to be seen, and Rhea tormented herself over what ifs and could-haves and should-haves. The Ardoni safe haven was now engulfed in flames, and the survivors were left with little hope after they lost so many innocents and soldiers alike, and the Deathsinger also claimed another Prime Song. When Rhea and the others recover from the attack, they find Gallius's body bloodied with deep punctures all over, which could only have been the work of the Deathsinger's Agroblast. The Tidesinger and all the other main knights return to the devastated city. Achillean and Rhea help out in the search and rescue for survivors trapped under the rubble. Rhea has already begun coping with the loss of Gallius and the apparent betrayal of Sen by choosing to ignore it. Rhea tells the others what she saw, but Greg and Val advocate for Sen, refusing to believe he would betray them. Sen wakes up alone in the chilling prisons of Hailstone, far north in the land controlled by the Voltaris. He looks outside the crack in his cell to see nothing but snow, and he's left by himself in the dark cell with plenty of time to contemplate the past. His thoughts, however, are eventually interrupted by the presence of another Ardoni, standing just outside the iron bars. Tigran Voltaris just had to visit the vulnerable clanless prisoner and shame him for his weakness even more. He pulls out Gallius' sword and twirls it around, degrading and taunting Sen, and the clanless Ardoni tries to ignore Tigran at first. Tigran's been lurking in the shadows a ton this season, especially after the Meridian fight, so this is where he wants to let out all of his fury and nearly takes out his anger on Sen. When Sen begins talking back to Tigran, Tigran angrily opens the cell door and begins walking towards Sen, laughing maniacally. The poor kid was just standing there, now scared and defenseless, when a much calmer voice was heard from the other side of the prison. The Deathsinger puts a stop to Tigran before he so much as laid a blade on Sen's body, and Tigran immediately relented, although he absolutely did not want to, and submitted himself to the Deathsinger like a dog. Sen is in pure confusion seeing Tigran, the most threatening, evil Voltaris alive, act submissive for once. When the Deathsinger orders Tigran to leave, Sen is still tense being in the room now with another dangerous Voltaris, but Deathsinger has other plans for Sen. He opens the cell— Wait, we already opened the cell door, hold on. He takes Sen to his quarters, where they have their first talk with no weapons being raised. The Deathsinger is still mostly corrupted by this point, but the stark difference between his behavior versus Tigran impacts Sen's view of them both. Ingressus interrogates Sen about the Resistance, and Sen is lucky, because he actually didn't know where the other two primes were. When Ingressus finds out that Sen is genuinely clueless, he stops the interrogation aspect of the conversation and asks Sen other questions about his Voltaris heritage. Sen honestly had no idea about any of this, so Ingressus allows him to stay in Hailstone for the time being and meet his brothers. Ingressus also chooses not to kill him, since Sen really had nothing he wanted. Instead, Ingressus decides to teach Sen about the Voltaris and educate him about their perspective and way of life. He even asks if Sen would like to be initiated into the clan. For Sen's entire life, he'd been alienated from the other Ardoni, known as the clanless child, and now he's finally offered to be part of a clan. But of course, it has to be the Voltaris. As much as Sen wants to be part of something greater than himself and join one of the clans, he has not fully accepted that he's Voltaris yet, and he's scared by the thought of having the Death Singer as his leader. He'd rather stay an outcast than be affiliated with the clan that stole his home and his adoptive family. Sen gathers his courage and says no to Ingressus, who respects Sen's decision and allows Sen to stay within the confines of the city until the next time they meet. The Death Singer still kind of keeps Sen as a captive, but he thought there was no chance Sen would consider any of his words if he was forced to remain in that cell any longer. Sen goes to meet his Voltaris brothers for the first time, and they each have differing stances on the Voltaris conflict. Delthius is one of the few supporters Tigran has left, although after the disaster that was Meridian, he laid low and stayed away from Tigran as much as he possibly could. Almrak, on the other hand, lost one of his legs as a child and cannot fight, but he's always been loyal to Ingressus and opposed the extremist ideologies of Tigran. Almrak and Delthius haven't always gotten along in recent times due to their views, but they still love each other as brothers, and Almrak welcomes Sen with open arms. Sen has to come to terms with his half-Voltaris, half-Sindaris lineage, and Delthius storms away, not wanting to see Sen. Almrak stays and sits with Sen to have a genuine talk that makes Sen's worldview change even further. He cannot bring himself to hate either of his brothers for simply having red markings. While Sen acclimates to being in Hailstone, the Knights discovered the location of the other two primes while he was gone. They had already found the Protesium Prime and gave it to the Tidesinger, and they swiftly marched to the northernmost point in Ardonia to obtain the final Prime Song, not far from Hailstone. Rhea is still in denial about Sen being Voltaris, and after hours of trekking through the snowy plains and ice sheets, they arrive at the village of Frostburn, where Achillean meets with the leader of the town. Frostburn, in this rewrite, is one of the very few places in Ardonia that is not nether occupied, because we imagine the people living there being like remote, crazy Siberians who are the toughest and most stubborn humans alive. A majority of the knights stayed with the people of Frostburn, while the Tidesinger led Rhea and Grim to Gale Point, where the Agressium Prime was hidden. After retrieving it and resting up, the knights reconvened at Frostburn. That was until the Deathsinger showed up with an army to finally siege the town and take the Prime Songs. The Tidesinger went to battle the Deathsinger with the Protesium Prime and tried to defend the Ingressium Prime, deciding against leaving it with Rhea and the others so Ingressus would ignore them and target him alone. It was an extremely risky move, but Achillean knew what he was getting himself into. He placed Rhea in charge, and Rhea hesitated, telling Achillean her worries and fears of leading again, but he knew she would be alright. The Tidesinger had trained her for a long time now, and he had complete confidence in her abilities. Even if she wasn't the perfect leader and had fears and worries, Rhea was willing to learn from her mistakes and do what was best for her troops, a total upgrade from the kind of leader Canon Rhea was. The Tidesinger and Deathsinger dueled, each of them gambling everything as they fought over the Agressium Prime Song. The Deathsinger had both the Saporium and Mobilium Primes, while the Tidesinger was only able to use the Protesium Prime, yet the singers appeared to be equally matched. The Battle of Frostburn marked the turning point of the war because the Knights of Ardonia nearly lost everything. The Nether captured the town of Frostburn after years of resistance, and the Deathsinger finally killed the Tidesinger, at last gaining all 4 primes. Rhea and the others retreated, and she looked at the destruction from the back of an Ender Dragon and saw the Deathsinger slightly lifting up the body of the Tidesinger, ignoring the 2 prime songs next to him. The violent snowstorm made it impossible to see the aftermath of the battle once the dragons flew further away, and now Rhea has to take up the mantle and be the one to lead the other Knights of Ardonia forward. All of our heroes' hopes were crushed in one single battle, and the tides of the war have turned for the worse. The Knights of Ardonia crash land in Kaltaria after the Battle of Frostburn, where they meet with the Ardoni Masters and inform them of the Tidesinger's death. The Ardoni hold a memorial for Achillean Nestoris, honoring his life and noble sacrifice. The Masters want to opt out of the war since their trump card failed, but Rhea has to find a way to stop their cowardice. The Knights call for a meeting with the Masters and their highest-ranking soldiers, and Rhea's first step towards earning her leadership role is convincing the Masters to continue to fight. With Grek, Hubris, and Master Aurelius taking her side, Rhea succeeds. She feels like she has to be the best leader she can for everyone else's sake, like the Tidesinger was. Rhea has had almost 2 whole seasons of slow character development, all leading to this point. And now that Rhea finally is the captain of the Resistance, it feels earned, and she has a reason to be in this high position. The Knights prepare to head south and send messenger birds to every village and every settlement to let the people know that they have not been defeated. Rhea wants to give the people of Ardonia a message of hope during this darker time, inspiring them the way the Tidesinger would have. Once Rhea is done, Master Aurelius comes to have a talk with her. He informs Rhea something the Tidesinger told him before he died. Rhea was the descendant of a champion. Osivian's dad, her grandpa, was a champion before Thalius, which is why her family was entrusted to keep the Prime Song safe after the First Great War. She remembered all of the horrible things that Killian taught her about champions, and now she has her own struggle of acknowledging who her family is. The same struggle Sen is facing. Master Aurelius says the Tidesinger withheld that information so she wouldn't have any more stress. However, he was planning on telling her after the Frostburn battle, had he lived. Rhea and Sen both have to come to terms with who they are, and instead of joining the other knights heading straight for Carthan, Rhea travels alone to her old home in Sindaria first. Another conflict Rhea now faces is becoming more pragmatic since she's the resistance leader, especially concerning Sen. Deep down in her heart, Rhea knows Sen would never join the Deathsinger's cause, but all the evidence is stacked against what she desperately wants to be true. Rhea has to think rationally and cast away her feelings, and for her own sake, blocks out any possibility of Sen still being on her side. Meanwhile, in Hailstone, Sen is taken to meet with the Deathsinger again to learn more about the Voltaris clan. Sen can tell Ingressus is behaving a lot different than their last conversation. He doesn't seem so distant and tries to be more personal with Sen by sharing the story of his clan and Thales Sindaris' massacre against his camp. Since the Vault fight, Sen's worldview of the Voltaris has slowly but surely been shattered. But this is what destroys it once and for all. His idolization of Thales is destroyed when Ingressus tells him what being champion really meant, and Sen can no longer bring himself to hate all the Voltaris. Sen knows a battle took place not long ago, and when he asks Ingressus what happened, Ingressus hesitates when he admits that he killed Achillean. Sen has an emotional reaction hearing this, and another terrifying truth clicks in his head. If he killed Achillean, there had to be only one reason why he did it. He's mortified upon discovering the Deathsinger has all 4 Prime Songs, and is terrified for his life and all of Ardonia. Ingressus tries to gain Sen's trust by teaching him more about the Voltaris and how to fight like one of them, but Sen wants nothing to do with the Deathsinger. Olmec and Sen grow closer together, and Delthius continues ignoring his clanless brother. Ingressus continues attempting to mentor Sen, paralleling how Achillean mentored Rhea. Because of Olmec, Sen finally accepts that he is a Voltaris, and that he always had been one of them. He's still very wary of the Deathsinger, but little by little, his fear ebbs every time they talk. Sen has been in Hailstone for a few weeks now, and though he's learned a lot from his brothers and Ingressus, he wants to escape and rejoin the Knights. Now that Sen knows who he is, he wants to use his unique role to keep fighting for what was right. Sen was not going to deny his Voltaris heritage. Rather, he would try to bring peace between the clans because he was half Sindaris and half Voltaris, which is the same way Olmec views their lineage. Delthius doesn't care about Sen's plan, but Olmec obliges and helps Sen get out of the city, and Sen begs Olmec to escape with him. Olmec just looks down at his cane and missing leg, and tells Sen he'd only be a hindrance and would just slow him down. Sen doesn't want to leave him there, but Olmec insists that he goes alone, saying something like, "I'll be okay. Ingressus is here and he will keep us safe. I'll miss you, Sen. I hope we see each other again soon." The clanless Ardoni reluctantly leaves Hailstone and runs away from the mighty city alone, and the Deathsinger watches Sen disappear into the snowy plains from his balcony, but does nothing to stop him. Sen ventures into the frigid mountains of Northwind and survives, and he finds himself on the border of Sindaria. He recognized the scenery and navigated his way to his old home, now overgrown with wildlife and all abandoned. The mood is somber as Sen walks around to his old room in the field where he and Rhea sparred for hours on end. Sen sighed, taking it all in, thinking about everything that's happened since the good old times. His thoughts, however, are interrupted by a familiar voice.
Sen?
He spins around to see none other than Rhea, who also came to Sindaria to reflect on the past, but for a completely different reason. They stare at each other, and Sen is slightly apprehensive, but a part of him is happy to see Rhea. Sen is open to making amends and healing their broken relationship. Rhea, however, is much more defensive, and keeps her pragmatic belief that Sen is a traitor. Both of their journeys have led them here, and now they must choose to either keep letting their differences alienate them from each other, or to finally tear down the walls between them. They have a massive disagreement, and Rhea draws her spear and holds it in a defensive position when Sen takes a few steps closer to her. Sen's eyes widen, and he looks hurt, but this makes Rhea double down on her belief, thinking it's a manipulation tactic. Sen tries telling her he's not there to harm her, and he keeps his iron sword slung across his back to prove it. Rhea takes a few deep breaths before she focuses on Sen, quietly says, "I'm sorry," and lunges forward to attack him. Sen remembers what Ingressus taught him and quickly grabs his sword to block her attack, and they start fighting in their old village. Sen is trying to reason with her and goes on defense, much like he used to do when they sparred as kids. Rhea wasn't having any of it at first, and just kept on asking Sen why he would betray them. After a few minutes, Sen used his song to defend himself from Rhea, causing her to stumble backwards and fall to the ground. Her spear was knocked out of her grasp, and instead of pointing his sword at Rhea, Sen reached out for her hand to help her back to her feet, mirroring the Season 1 scene. This time, when Sen offers Rhea his hand, she's the one who tricks Sen and pulls him right back into fighting. They both let out all their unchecked anger into this fight, and after they've both collapsed on the ground, exhausted and tired, Sen finally asks Rhea, "Are you done?" Rhea answers in a snarky tone, something like, "I don't know, are you?" In between tired breaths, Sen just looks over at Rhea, and Rhea looks back at Sen's eyes and sees real kindness. Sen is about to say something, but Rhea cuts him off, only now realizing just how irrational she was acting. Rhea apologizes to Sen first, showing maturity because she knows she did more wrong than Sen did, yet she framed him as the bad guy. Rhea genuinely regrets what she did, and Sen accepts her apology, and admits to Rhea his own wrongdoings as well. Rhea tells Sen everything about her being a champion and becoming the leader of the Resistance, and Sen then shares the truth of him being half Voltaris and being trained by the Death Singer. He also tells Rhea what she'd unconsciously known from the start. He never was a traitor. The two Ardoni take the first steps to fixing their relationship, though they still have a long way to go before they'd ever be as close as they were in Season 1. And not long after, they journey together to rejoin the other knights for the final battle of the war. Meanwhile, Tigran's secretive schemes begin falling into place as the Death Singer gets his redemption arc. Only the few extremists Tigran trusts know about his plans post-Meridian, and Delthius was not one of them. Tigran thinks lowly of Delthius because of his perceived cowardice, the fact that his brother is a clanless rebel, and that his other brother is a pacifist whispering around ideologies of peace rather than vengeance. Only Lucidius and a few others know what Tigran's been up to. Thanks to Lucidius spying on Deathsinger, they know he plans on betraying the Nether, so they planned a counterattack that would thwart the Deathsinger's coup d'etat. Tigran already sowed the seeds of an alliance with King Pythus earlier in Season 3 to crush Ingressus and make the Voltaris powerful again. The audience would have had no idea about this aspect of Tigran's conspiracy. There would have only been slight allusions to it. He and Pythus are ready for the Deathsinger and Vulcanus to walk straight into enemy territory, being vastly outnumbered and outsmarted. When the two of them came to the throne room to overthrow Pythus, Tigran was prepared for it. Tigran told the few extremists he trusted to get away from Hailstone, and a couple of them even joined him in the Nether throne room battle. Their perfect plan would have gone something like this. Tigran and Pythus killed the Death Singer, and Tigran takes the Prime Songs and Voltar for himself. Then, Tigran would convince the other Voltaris that, oh, Ingressus was killed fighting Vulcanus, and manipulate them all to join him. Any Voltaris who refused to join Tigran would have been slaughtered by the Nether, and those who followed Tigran would finally have their revenge on the other clans, and rule Ardonia alongside the Nether King. However, this isn't what happens. Tigran may have outsmarted Ingressus in the throne room, but he didn't account for everything. After Pythus and Tigran reveal their double crossing of the Death Singer, Lucidius stabs one of Ingressus' loyalists, starting the clash. Pythus sent the Angel of Death to begin the slaughter at Hailstone, and Ingressus flew off to try and stop him. Tigran sprinted to catch Death Singer and 2v1 him with the Angel of Death, and Ingressus threw the Angel to the ground and fought them both. Ingressus ignored Tigran, his main focus being to stop the Angel from destroying his clan, having a not now Tigran attitude because something far more important was at hand. The Angel of Death gets away because of Tigran, and Ingressus looks up at the portal, horrified to see the Angel flying through it, knowing it's all over. Tigran wastes no time firing his Aggressium at the Death Singer's back, and as Tigran wickedly grins, Ingressus turns around, hardly even injured. Tigran's best attack merely caused the Death Singer to stumble, and Ingressus stares at Tigran with pure, unadulterated rage. Tigran's face morphs from a look of victory to nothing but fear as the Death Singer charged at him. Ingressus barrages every Aggressium attack possible at him, and after 10 seconds of getting absolutely ragdolled, Ingressus Spartan kicks Tigran into a pit of soul fire.
This is Sparta!
Tigran falls into a literal pit of fire, and the Death Singer stands above him, watching Tigran suffer trying to climb out. Tigran was defeated in 10 seconds, even though the Prime Songs pushed Ingressus to drag out Tigran's torment. The Death Singer wanted nothing more than to watch Tigran burn for all he'd done, but Ingressus turns around and leaves Tigran for dead because, unlike the latter, he cares more about his clan than revenge. In spite of that, this is not the end for Tigran. His body is charred and burned from the fires of the Nether, yet his durability and indomitable will allowed him to escape the blue flames, badly scorched and barely alive. Since his body was consumed by the Nether soul flames, we thought this would also weaken Tigran's connection to his songs, just to make him suffer more for his evil deeds. Tigran leaves the Nether once he's finally able to walk again, having survived the Deathsinger's pure wrath and the unforgiving Soulfire. Every single slight movement makes his entire body ache and scream with pain, yet Tigran's sheer hatred is what drives him to keep going forward. He endures his burns long enough to regroup with the few extremists left at Crown Peak, and aside from Sen and the Deathsinger himself, they are the last remaining Voltaris. Lucidius was among them, and they stood with the Nether as the Knights of Ardonia invaded Crown Peak to end the war once and for all. The fighting on both sides of the battle is intense, and Tigran's bloodlust overwhelms the agony of his wounds and he hunts down the leading knights. He approaches Sen and Rhea, who fight together for the first time since the Meridian battle. The other Knights of Ardonia lead the armies further into the city while Sen and Rhea fight Tigran for the last time. Despite everything going against him, Tigran fights with every ounce of anger left in him. His body is charred and he is maddened beyond belief, and through his blind rage, Sen and Rhea are finally able to get the upper hand. They kill Tigran together, destroying the monster that took everything from them. Sen takes back Thalias's enchanted diamond broadsword, finally truly earning it. Tigran dies in a much more humiliating way. He survives the Deathsinger's fury and the Soul Flames, yet he's killed by two literal teenagers. Tigran's death brings them a sense of closure, and by working together their relationship takes another step closer to being restored. Sen knows the crimes Thalias committed with the sword he now holds, and he wants to forge a new legacy, different from the one Thalias and Tigran gave that blade. No more innocents would be killed using the beautiful weapon. Rather, it would be only used to protect them, no matter which clan they came from. Tigran's death does not mark the end of the final battle, though. Rhea continued leading the rebellion, carrying on the legacy of the late Tidesinger by making level-headed decisions that were in the best interests of her soldiers, not herself. In the heat of battle as the Tidesinger's successor, Rhea was determined to make up for all her other screw-ups in the past, and every single move she made was reminiscent of Achillean Nestoris himself. Rhea still has slight miscalculations here and there, since she's not perfect, but she keeps herself calm solely for the sake of everyone else, and the Resistance is able to recover from them. Towards the end of the battle, the sun is beginning to set as Sen, Rhea, and the other knights all fight Pythis. However, they don't have the power to defeat him, only the Deathsinger does. Just as Pythis is about to kill them both, Ingressus flies in with an insurmountable amount of fury and directs it all at Pythis. The Deathsinger kills Pythis, but the wound he received during their battle is fatal. Sen walks to the throne room alone to find Pythis' dead body and Ingressus clutching his chest. Ingressus tells Sen that all the others are dead and begs him to take Voltar. Olmrak, Delthius, and all the other Voltaris had been slaughtered, and even Tigran's extremists at Crown Peak were all killed in the battle. Sen hesitates, but he takes Voltar from the Deathsinger's hands and promises to restore the Voltaris clan the way Olmrak would have wanted. Ingressus' life story and last words would resonate with Sen more because they actually had a slight bond in Hailstone, and Sen understands the meaning behind everything Ingressus admits. When he confesses to Sen that he was wrong to ally with the Nether, he's not only admitting that the act of treason itself was wrong, but also that event is what caused all the wars and extremists like Tigran to destroy the Voltaris clan from within. They took Ingressus' act of distress out of context, and it cost him everything. Sen comforts Ingressus and assures him the Voltaris will live on, as Ingressus watches the sunset one last time. The Battle of Crown Peak brought the Second Great War to an end, and the Ardoni Masters allowed Sen to restore the Voltaris clan. Master Aurelius is the one who convinced the others, and a quick scene of Sen succeeding at redeeming the Voltaris where Ingressus failed would add so much more finality to his arc. Sen becomes the Voltaris Master and re-establishes the clan, founded upon ideals of peace, forgiveness, and unity. The new Voltaris clan was rooted in Olmrak's beliefs, and Sen was content with his new role carrying on the legacy of his late brothers and made peace with being the successor of the former Deathsinger, Ingressus Voltaris. Rhea continued leading the Knights of Ardonia after the war ended, continuing to fight for what was right. She aspired to be like the Tidesinger, Achillean Nestoris, and though Rhea could never replace him, she wanted to keep his spirit alive through her leadership and service to the people of Ardonia. Rhea's arc is nearly complete. She went from a doubtful fighter in a ragtag rebel group to the highest-ranking leader of a continent-wide resistance, maturing slowly and growing more competent through each conflict. Both Rhea and Sen come out of the Second Great War as fully developed characters. The Deathsinger and Tidesinger were never able to make amends while they still lived, but Sen and Rhea did. They had already begun to amend their friendship and, in time, would eventually regain the connection they had all those years ago in Season 1. Sen and Rhea are the ones who finally break the cycle of violence between the clans, completing their character arcs and forever solidifying their places in history. Rewriting the entirety of Songs of War Seasons 2 and 3 is no small task. However, rewriting these three characters has been an incredibly fun challenge. Diving deeper than their basic motivations and exploring these characters in the way they deserve to be makes their stories feel so much more complete, especially considering Sen is basically the main character. Both him and Rhea needed deeper, underlying themes for me to be actually invested in their journeys. And now these rewritten arcs parallel the Tidesinger and Deathsingers in a satisfying way. Rhea and Sen's themes are very similar at first glance. They both involve making peace with the past, the effects of loss and grief, and leadership. They each have their own distinct sub-themes too. Rhea's being more about the self-sabotage caused by doubt and embracing what you perceive to be your weaknesses or imperfections and overcoming them in a healthy way. Sen's journey takes him on a bit of a different path, one that involves letting go of hatred, accepting who you are, and learning there is more than one side to every story. The major differences between the heroes and the villains in this rewrite are their responses to pain. Voltaris, like Ingressus and Tigran, had everything taken from them, and they lashed out on the world. And Tigran specifically wanted the world to feel the same pain he did to an even greater extent. Sen and Rhea lost their family and home as well, but with the guidance of good friends, mentors, and especially the altruistic Tidesinger, they overcame their loss and did everything in their power to prevent others from going through what they did. Oh yeah, Gallius also would have found out Sen had some sort of connection to the Voltaris using his skills in acquiring information, and subtly dropped Sen hints but never outright told him anything. Because of course he didn't, it's Gallius, you really think he would? Towards the end of Season 3, Sen might have realized Gallius knew the entire time, yet he perfectly understood why he kept it secret. Our goal with this rewrite was also to make sure Tigran wasn't cast aside and forgotten. He's the second strongest Voltaris, and we believed he deserved to live up to that title. Tigran's arc also involves a bit of Christian symbolism. 1/3 of the Voltaris clan followed Tigran's evil ideals, and in the end they were all destroyed, and Tigran himself was literally thrown into a lake of fire. All of Tigran's horrendous actions divided the Voltaris clan and brought pain to so many people in Ardonia, and he paid for it 10 times over. He is one of, if not the most evil Songs of War character in this rewrite, and he deserved to live up to that reputation he got in Season 1. We know that if Squared Media receives the proper funding for Songs of War, they'd be willing to undertake the project and the script would get a massive rewrite. If any Squared Media directors happen to be watching this video, I want you to know that our small team would always be willing to help if Songs of War does get revived. Rewriting the whole script would be a very difficult and lengthy process, and we have many ideas for it. We'd also be down to help write the spin-offs and just thought you should know that as well. If you would have us, that would be amazing, and if not, we completely understand. We have some ambitious rewriting plans of our own for the future, and if Songs of War Seasons 2 and 3 do come into fruition, we sincerely wish you the best of luck, and we know it will be amazing no matter what you do. If you all want to see the official Songs of War Seasons 2 and 3 become a reality, we'll all have to do our part and support Squared Media any way we can. It's still relatively early, and for now the best thing you can all do is just spread the word, share the full movie as well as Mont's recent announcement with others, and keep the community alive through your edits, your memes, the fan productions, and so much more. I have hope that Songs of War can come back greater than ever, but it'll take a village to make that happen. Us Songs of War fans are far and few, but we've endured all this time, and the only place to go from here is up. Thank you all for watching this video. It ended up being a lot longer than I expected, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. I want to thank Yeezus, Alex, and Get Scribbled once again for being the other main writers of this project, and all of you who watched until the very end, because it genuinely means so much to us. I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.